Yeah. Hair flip, yeah, I'm a badass bitch. I don't like it. Hair flip, yeah. Oh my god. So you guys should be happy. Oh my goodness. Hair flip. But anyways, hair flip. Hair flipping on these hoes. Hi.
Dead in a rolled-up gym mat at his high school. Originally ruled accidental. The parents are very upset. They believe that their son was murdered. So now feds took over the investigation. But now the latest development we're getting is that there was an email tip sent to the sheriff's office saying and implicating certain individuals. The sheriff's office, which ruled this an accident, now following up on that the next day, issuing subpoenas. And it seems like this investigation moving forward. Joey Jackson.
Now, a Channel 2 Action News investigation into the mystery surrounding the death of a Valdosta teenager found in an upright gym mat at school. Two young men at the focus of the Kendrick Johnson controversy have declined to talk to investigators, a grand jury, and an on-camera interview until now. Channel 2 investigative reporter Mark Winnie live outside FBI headquarters in DeKalb County.
But we are outside the FBI's Atlanta field office because that is where we're told Agent Rick Bell was assigned, and both his sons are the subject of target letters from a federal prosecutor. And now we hear from them at last.
Did you have anything to do with the death of Kendrick Johnson?
No. He was like one of my good friends.
Even at the time of his death?
Even at the time of his death.
You know, everywhere.
No, they weren't friends.
And in a lawsuit, Johnson's parents allege a group, including the Bell brothers, sons of an FBI agent, violently assaulted their son, leading to his death.
None of the allegations that were made were without research.
But both Bells maintain they have rock-solid alibis.
Did you see
Point during that day.
Where were you?
I was in class. First block, second block, third block, and fourth block.
Close to the gym?
No.
Did you see Kendrick that day?
No.
So Brian is clearly lying right here in our face. They literally had math class together, and they had math before they went to lunch, which was the next block that they both had lunch at the same time. And not only did Brian see him that day, Kendrick and Brian were partners in math class, the math class that they had that day, to where they had a presentation that they had to obviously work together as a group to fulfill. So that is a blatant lie. He saw Kendrick multiple times.
No.
Did you see Kendrick that day?
No.
Surveillance video by the Johnson family lawyers shows Brandon Bell crossing the hallway back and forth by the old gym. At one point he completely changes his clothing. There is a cover-up of mass proportions involved.
The suit fight between Brian and Kendrick on a team bus.
A year before,
what was that
still
about,
friends.
anyway?
So I can't even remember. It was.
Now, Brian states that he does not remember the incident that took place between he and Kendrick Johnson, but thank God for us because we do. If you check out itgnext.com, they have the story of Brian Bell and Kendrick and the altercation that transpired between them that led this rivalry for as long as it went. The story is called Brian Bell, The Damage of a Rumor. Let's get into this article, actually. Here is some proof that this article exists. This is not me making anything up, and I am just going to read it. So on Friday, November 18th, 2011, it wasn't a particular memorable day for either Brian Bell or late Kendrick Johnson. The two teens were freshman members of the Lowndes High School Vikings football team. That night, the Vikings played the Grayson Rams on the road in the second round of the playoffs. Brian and Kendrick were riding on the bus with the rest of the players. In fact, Brian was sitting in the front of Kendrick, whom he considered a good friend. So at this point in time, Kendrick and Brian were friends, okay, in 2011, all right? So as it is bound to happen with teenage boys, some good-natured ribbing began. as it is also bound to happen with teenage boys, particularly football players on the way to a much anticipated playoff game, tempers flared. I thought Kendrick was the one messing with me. I turned and asked him and the guy sitting with him to stop, recalls Brian. The pickling continued. Brian says he turned around and threw a punch in Kendrick's direction. He missed. Kendrick answered with a punch of his own that also came up empty. By that time, the coaches had made their way to the back of the bus and the fight was over. Both kids were unhurt. Lowndes would lose the game 25-17 and watch the season come to a premature end. To make matters worse, neither Brian nor Kendrick could ride the bus back to Valdosta. Head coach Randy McPherson, my fault, sorry, has a rule: fight on the bus and you get kicked off the bus. Brian's brother, Brandon, was a junior on the 2011 Vikings team, and the two sons on the team, their parents, Rick and Karen Bell, had traveled to the game. After the game ended, Brian hopped in the car with his parents and rode back with them. Because Kendrick's parents were not at the game, he had to seek alternative transportation back to Lowndes High School. He ended up riding home in the front seat of a patrol car with one of Lowndes High School's resource officers. Monday morning at school, both Brian and Kendrick were punished for the scuffle. They served their suspensions and gave the incident a little thought afterwards. The two even shook hands and didn't let the altercation interrupt their friendship. After the scuffle, everything was fine. Neither one of us thought it was a big deal, says Brian. Nearly a year and a half later, that seemingly insignificant scrape on the way to the football game will come back to haunt the Bell family in the worst way under the most tragic circumstances. Now, this is the part of the article that I found really sketchy and really made me reconsider a lot of things when it came to Kendrick's death. Now, Thursday, January 10th, 2013, approximately at 1:30 p.m., okay? The day Kendrick died. Now, let's get into the rest of this article. For much of the day, things went as they normally would on any winter's day at Lowndes High. Then the unthinkable happened. Kendrick Johnson, now a sophomore, went into Lowndes' old gym for PE class. Kendrick was no longer a member of the football team. As such, he had PE with non-players in the old gym instead of going to the field house for weightlifting, okay? Video shows Kendrick entering the gym alone. He would never be seen alive again. Now, this is indicating that the old gym is close to the field house where there is weightlifting. So the weights are close to the gym. Remember that. Now, remember this as well. The next morning, which would have been January 11th, his body was discovered by students in the class, in class in the old gym. His body was headfirst inside one of a number of vertically rolled up cheerleading mats stacked together besides a set of bleachers in the corner of the old gym. Word spread quickly that a student had been found dead in the gym. The news came with all sorts of rumors, innuendo, including a story that Kendrick had been murdered and stuffed in the mat. Now listen to this. The day of Kendrick's death, he and Brian were partners in a game in front of their math class. After they completed the presentation and left class, they went their separate ways. Neither knew they would never see each other again. Brian's mother was in Macomb at a Lowndes wrestling match with Brandon. Okay. The bus driver for the wrestling team had received a message that afternoon saying something bad had happened at the high school. Now, listen, Brandon's mother was in Macomb at Lowndes wrestling match with Brandon, I believe it's Brandon. Sorry. The bus driver for the wrestling team had received a message that afternoon saying that something bad had happened at the high school. So why would the bus driver be getting a message that something happened bad at the high school the day of Kendrick's death if he was not found until the next day? Okay? The article also says it was a cryptic message. It would be cryptic when he wasn't found yet. No one knew that Kendrick was dead until January 11th, not January 10th. I just want y'all to think about that, okay? But moving right along. So it's mighty weird that this bus driver got a cryptic message and delivered it to the mother. You know, why would the mother, Why would the mother have it? Obviously, the mother got this information from the bus driver, but that doesn't make sense. So let's continue. One that didn't divulge all the details, but included enough information to let you know something serious had taken place. Karen called her husband, whom is Brian's father, who is an agent with the Federal Bureau of Investigation. If something was going on at the high school, surely he would know. When Karen got Rick Bell, her husband, on the phone, he said he hadn't heard a thing. The FBI wouldn't investigate a local death anyway if a crime had been committed. It would be a state crime, and local authorities, along with the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, would work the crime scene, not the feds. So so she gets a cryptic message from the bus driver on January 10th, the day that Kendrick Johnson lost his life. Why would she call her husband if nothing happened? They don't know exactly what happened, and the message is cryptic. You know, nothing happened to your son because Brian was fine. He was nothing but a phone call away. He wasn't with his mother. She was with Brandon at the wrestling meet in Macomb. So obviously, if something bad happened to her son, that would have been the issue. So for her husband to reach out to the son, you know, at that point, this doesn't make sense. Somebody knows something, starting with this bus driver. Where did you get the cryptic message from? And what was it about? Why did Karen, the mother, feel the need to contact her husband, whom works for the Federal Bureau of Investigation, if she didn't think something bad happened? Makes you think about some things, huh? So let's get into this article that you can find at valdosta.today.com. Was a witness in this Kendrick Johnson case silenced? Okay. Now, a man came forward and stated some information that he heard from one of the brother Brian and Brandon Bell's mouth themselves as a confession that he reported. Now, let's get into this article, okay? The man was later arrested on trespassing charges, and Jackie Johnson, Kendrick's mother, has claimed the arrest was bogus and an attempt to silence supposed new evidence in the Kendrick Johnson case. Was a witness silenced? Is there new credible evidence to be presented in this case? Now, the background is, of course, you know, that they said that it was an accidental death, you know, on Kendrick, in the school that he died of, you know, in Matt, you know, due to an accident. So let's get into the components that this witness came forward and stated. Here are the important bullet points. One of the things that this witness stated is that Brian Bell killed Kendrick Johnson. What else did he state? Is that Brandon Bell and Brian Bell and Ryan Hall argued with Kendrick Johnson in the school's gym. Brian Bell struck Kendrick Johnson with a dumbbell during a roid rage. Okay. Brian Bell threatened Ryan Hall to keep quiet. Former FBI agent Rick Bell, which is their father, contacted former Lowndes County Sheriff Chris Pine about the fight. Pine met with the county coroner. An unarmed FBI agent altered Lowndes High School surveillance footage. Kendrick Johnson organs were removed to obscure time of death. Kendrick Johnson's autopsy records were falsified. Okay, these are the things that Brian Bell admitted to this witness. Okay, and the witness name is Dominic Hernandez. All right.
Bruising on KJ's body, including bruises to his neck and face. The law enforcement agencies did not secure the area with crime on KJ's body, including bruises to his neck and face. The law enforcement agencies did not secure the area with crime in the sheriff's report. The coroner, after being pursued by Victor Blackwell from CNN, later admitted that the scene had been compromised and the report he wrote was changed by Lowndes County Sheriff. He provided his original report, and Lowndes County Sheriff's Office had removed many things from it. KJ's mother was at the office in the school that.
So if you pay attention to what Anonymous is stating in this video, Kendrick Johnson's family, when they exhumed his body and paid for their own autopsy to be done on him, the autopsy came out to find that there was blunt trauma, there was blunt force to him. He was definitely beaten. And on top of that, around his neck, there was a lot of bruising around his neck. So the theory that Dominic has about Brian throwing a barbell at him, that completely makes sense. It could have hit him in his neck. It could have hit him in his head. It completely makes sense. In if there is also autopsy photos of Kendrick and how they found him, and his face was definitely disfigured. He was clearly beaten by the look of his mouth, by the look of his neck, and by the look of the side of his head. Something clearly happened to him. All right. He was beaten. And Dominic's theory and what he hears from the confession from Brian, that makes complete sense, that he threw a dumbbell at him, and that is probably what took his life.
Of our house, he was the joy of our house, and he gives us strength to keep fighting.
The Lowndes County Sheriff says after a thorough investigation, his office agrees with the state medical examiner that John...